Are you ready for? Are you ready for?
Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about flashbangs, one of my favorite perks. Flashbangs are a great way to extend chase. They're also a great way to save your teammates. They're also a great way to, kind of bully the killer too, if you're into that. But what are flashbangs? So flashbangs are a Leon Kennedy perk. And at tier 3, after completing 50% of a gen, you're able to make a flashbang. You have to enter a locker, press the active ability button to be able to craft a flashbang. You'll have one charge, it detonates with a loud bang and a flash of light, creates a noise notification, and can be used to distract or blind the killer. When you leave the trial, you will leave the flashbang behind, so make sure you end up using it. So let's talk about flashbang builds. My favorite flashbang build is flashbangs, quick and quiet, inner healing, and head on. Quick and quiet goes so well with flashbangs because it helps you get in and out of the lockers a little more quickly and a whole lot more quietly. Inner healing is great with flashbangs because so often you're going to take a hit while trying to get a save at the hook. Popping a totem and having that in your pocket and being able to heal in a locker, maybe while you're even crafting your next flashbang, pairs great. Any kind of locker build, if you're running anything that has to do with lockers, head on is my favorite. Next to flashbangs, there's nothing quite like it. Flashbang also pairs really well with Saboteur and Breakout. So often while you are trying to get a flashbang save, you are running alongside the killer who is carrying a survivor. Breakout is going to help that survivor more quickly wiggle out of the killer's arms. And it also is going to give you a little bit of haste. So to be able to get to the hook more quickly while carrying a flashbang and running Saboteur, sometimes we don't always get the flashbangs. Sometimes the killer looks away when we try to drop that flashbang at the hook. Saboteur is a great backup. It is something that is probably going to guarantee that survivor wiggles because you saboing the hook while the killer turns away because maybe you've dropped a flashbang or maybe they have Lightborn and you didn't know it yet. The Saboteur is going to pretty much guarantee that that survivor wiggles and you both get out of there. Bond and Background Player are also two perks that go very well with Flashbang. Bond is an aura revealing perk and you can see the other survivors within a 36-meter range. So when a survivor is being chased, you can watch from a safe distance and be able to possibly get in for a save without taking any kind of hit while those two are in chase. Background Player also pairs really well because when the killer picks up that downed survivor, you break into a sprint at 200% of your normal running speed for 5 seconds. And let me tell you, that is so fast for so long. It helps you get to the hook more quickly, or it helps you even get a potential save because you once were not at a close distance, but having something like Background Player or Sprint Burst helps you get them more quickly. So flashbangs can be used in a few different builds, and while flashbangs can be used to extend your chase, they're really primarily used to be able to save your teammates, the other survivors. When you drop a flashbang, the loud bang and the flash of light will blind the killer and they'll drop the survivor and they'll run away and continue on with the trial and maybe even survive. Getting a flashbang save at the hook is also tough and it comes down to getting the timing quite right. You need to be able to drop the flashbang pretty much as soon as you think the killer is going to M1 you. As soon as you think that that killer is hitting the button to hit you, you have to get the timing right and pretty much drop the flashbang at the exact same moment because you are locking the killer into the animation of hitting you and hoping that they're still locked in the animation that they don't have time to turn away. It is very hard. Ping has issues with this. It is not necessarily easy, but again, you're going to waste a lot of flashbangs getting some of these saves until you get the timing down. So the next save is a drive-by flashbang. At least that's what I like to call them. So I try to time the flashbang drop when the killer is in animation picking up the survivor, but you cannot drop the flashbang as soon as the killer picks up the survivor. You will not get the actual save. You will get the blind, but you will not actually get the killer to be stunned by the flashbang. I like to think of the killer animation for the pickup of survivor to be broken down into 3 parts. There's a moment that the killer immediately picks up the survivor. There's an animation of the killer almost looking like he's heaving the survivor onto their shoulders. And then there's the moment of the survivor actually being on the killer's shoulder. What you need to wait for this to be successful is you need to wait for the moment that the killer is heaving the survivor onto the shoulder. If you do it any earlier, you will not get the actual save. You'll get the blind, but it will not stun the killer. If you wait any longer, the killer is going to be unlocked out of the animation and have time to either look up or turn away from the flashbang. So let's talk about timing flashbangs around corners so that when a killer is walking forward, by the time the flashbang goes off, you get the blind or the save. You want to be able to time this in a way that the killer hasn't walked over the flashbang and it's going off underneath their feet or even behind them. And you want to be able to time this that dropping the flashbang too early and the killer isn't close enough for the bang to actually blind them. When I try to get a flashbang around a corner or in hopes that the killer is going to walk into it, again, I'm watching really for the red stain. You do not have to drop the flashbang in the red stain. It can be right outside the perimeter, but pretty close. So I hope to drop the flashbang, and by the time the flashbang is actually going off, it is in the killer's red stain. Dropping a flashbang, you have to remember that it takes a second for the flashbang to actually go off after it hits the ground. Getting the timing right with these just takes time. It takes time running flashbangs in your build and using them. You're going to waste a lot of flashbangs learning how to get the timing quite right. But once you do, you realize how much easier it is to get these saves once you realize what the timing is between a flashbang being dropped and by the time the killer actually gets there. So let's talk about basement bangs. Basement bangs I love because so often the killer doesn't expect them. When you run into a basement, the killer doesn't expect you to go down there and sabo a hook. You can't sabo those hooks. You can't really get a head-on save. It's pretty rare. The opening there is too wide for you to successfully land a head-on save. So running down into the basement, the killer is going to think that maybe you're just trying to take protection hits, maybe you have breakout on for the survivor to wiggle more quickly. But so often than not, they're thinking that you're going to just be failing in the basement. While running down the basement stairs, I try to watch for the killer behind me. So often you will see the red stain as they're carrying the survivor down the stairs. I watch for the killer's feet in their red stain. As their red stain gets closer to the very bottom of those stairs at the platform, in between the two sets of stairs, you can see the killer's red stain and their feet approach that very edge of the wall. That is when I try to drop my flashbang at the larger opening. So often the killer is not expecting it. Some killers hear it and they will try to turn away from it, or they think the timing's just not right, it's too far away. But 9 times out of 10, I do usually land these. So I always try to say, watch for the killer's feet. Watch for the killer's feet as they are rounding this small wall. So often than not, they're just going to W key to the hook because it's a pretty guaranteed hook for killers, but just not against flashbangs. Another reason why I like flashbangs over flashlights is so often that the killer will try to pick up a survivor and face up against a wall or an object to protect themselves from a flashlight blind. But the nice thing with flashbangs is while running flashbangs and a killer is picking up a survivor, sometimes there's not collision with the killer. This isn't always true, but a lot of times you can press up against the killer hard enough while they are up against a wall that you will glitch through them enough that when you drop the bang at their feet, it is enough distance that the killer does become blinded. And my all-time favorite is blinding a killer who rips a survivor off a generator with a flashbang. There's nothing quite so satisfying, and it's really fun with a duo partner, but it is kind of advanced for flashbangs, so I don't suggest trying this unless you kind of had a handle and a few bang saves under your belt. But there's nothing so fun as blinding a killer who is ripping a survivor off a generator. When the killer goes to rip a survivor off a generator, they're locked in that animation. So as that duo partner holding the flashbang, your partner will get ripped off the generator. You with the flashbang immediately get off that gen and throw the flashbang at the generator, in between the generator and the killer. It has to be immediate. Unlike flashlights, you do have to wait a moment. Flashbangs, you have to drop them as soon as the killer rips that survivor. But you must take a few steps to be in between the gen and the killer when you drop that flashbang. It is so satisfying, but trust, you will piss off killers for doing this. One of the hardest flashbang saves to get, in my opinion, is the CJ Tech. A CJ Tech was invented by a guy named CJXCCVI back in 2017. Getting a CJ is one of those that It takes, again, a lot of practice. I have failed at this so many times. I've died so many times trying to get this, to the point that I only have one clip of me actually successfully landing a CJ tech. The main difference for me is I don't often run flashlights. I pretty much hang on to flashbangs as my primary blinding item when it comes to facing killers. To get a CJ tech, you have to wait for a survivor to be downed under a pallet. You have to drop the pallet and successfully land the stun against the killer. Both the killer and the downed survivor have to be on the same side of the pallet, opposite of you. As soon as you stun the killer, normally you would have a flashlight in your hand when it comes to CJ techs. You would back away about a step or two and start to blind the killer. Just as you're blinding the killer's going to want to break the pallet. You have to, again, just get the timing down right. You would force yourself back over the pallet, vaulting towards the killer and the downed survivor. The killer, who thinks he's about to break the pallet, is forced into an animation that isn't breaking the pallet, but instead picking up the survivor. You then vault back over the pallet and you would blind the killer with your flashlight from there. But I don't carry flashlights normally. When carrying flashbangs, it works a little differently. When you vault over the pallet towards the killer, when you think he's going to break the pallet, you have to drop the flashbang facing the pallet on the same side as the killer and then vault over it as soon as you drop the flashbang. Flashbangs have definitely become my most favorite perk to run. They're great for saves, they're great for extending chases, and there's more than just one way to get a flashbang save. Whether you're taking hits at hook, getting a drive-by, a pre-drop, a nice basement bang, a wall bang, getting those grabs off gens, or the beloved CJ tech. There's nothing quite like landing a bang at endgame collapse on the line against a killer, saving your teammate, and you all escape. Don't be afraid to waste a lot of flashbangs while you're learning all the timings. It's gonna take time, so don't get too frustrated. So don't forget to have fun, and good luck next match.